from side mount. So when I get into side control, there are basically 4 points that I want to control. I want to control my opponent's hips, I want to control the near arm, I want to control the far arm, and I want to control his head. What type of control I have at any time is going to dictate what submissions are available to me. Ideally, I want to have this near arm pinned down, the hips blocked off, control of his head, and an underhook on the far arm. Unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. Good guys can keep their near arm hidden from me. I may only be able to catch an overhook on the far side, but I still want to be able to submit from whatever position that I'm in. So we're going to run through a series where we're going to talk about controlling when I'm not able to get the underhook on the far side, as well as being able to submit when I'm not able to get control of the underhook. So first thing we need to talk about is what is proper position for when I cannot get an underhook on the far side. There are 2 things that I am really concerned about if he manages to get the underhook and I can't. If Donovan manages to come up on his side and get that underhook really deep and really high, this is horrible for me. Any chance of me flattening him back out on the mat is pretty well gone at this point. I can get an underhook, but with that thing jacked really high up, I can't really get a lot of control. I can't reach back to his legs here. He can stand up, he can take my back. There's all kinds of nasty things that happen. So I don't want this to get deep. And the other thing that I don't want, if you'll come around here, Demir, I like to choke from this position. I want access to his neck. And so I really do not want him to have his hands up here by his neck, blocking me from getting my hands together. So I don't want him all the way deep, and I don't want him all the way down, protecting his neck. 2 things that I can do to address that. First thing, I have to be quick to react to this when I feel it coming on. But if I feel Donovan turning to his side and starting to shoot the underhook, if I stay here and he gets elbow deep on me and he can start turning that up, he's going to push it up, and now he's going to be in a really good position and I'm going to be in trouble. So when I feel him going for that underhook, what I'm going to do is, rather than staying here at his chest, over here, Demir, instead I'm going to shift my body weight down to his hips, and I'm going to sit on his hips. And all that does is it just crushes his underhook. So now, rather than being up here at the elbow where he's strong, I'm going really far out on the lever, and I'm sitting down on top of his wrist, and now his underhook doesn't mean anything. That underhook is worthless. He can dig at that all day, and he's got nothing with it. From here, I've got a couple of different options. If all I want to do at this point is get my underhook back, I have the ability to frame and pummel back in, and I can maybe grab my underhook. Or if that's not going to work, maybe he's just really good at taking that underhook back, or I just feel really good at submitting from overhooks. Now that I've got this thing pushed down, I can slide my overhook in here at the elbow, and I can push down, and now I can keep him from pulling that underhook up. Second problem for me, as a guy who wants to choke from that position, is I do not want his arm all the way down here protecting his neck. Because now when I go to start wrapping my hands together, now I've got Donovan's hand in the way. And now he can fight, and now I got to deal with this. I don't want to deal with any of that. So what I can do to manage this and try to keep his hands away from his neck is I'm going to use what I call a distraction submission. 2 key points for distraction submissions. They need to be easy to apply without losing position. And they also, regardless of whether they're high percentage, they need to be legitimate enough that if he doesn't do something to address them, I will tap him out. What I've got from this position, if he sinks his underhook way down here and got his hands up by his neck, is I can shoot my hand through, grab here, bend that wrist back, and now I have a gooseneck wrist lock right here. The back of my arm is controlling right at my biceps, his elbow, which I have to keep that locked in place. Now all I gotta do is just flex that wrist and tap him out. Now the reality is I'm not gonna get taps from this position. 99% of the time people are gonna get out, because all he really has to do is just start moving that elbow around and he's gonna get out. The point is, if he starts learning that every time he puts his hands up by his neck, he's gonna get wrist locked, he's gonna start getting a little bit leery about putting his hand up there. And so I can use that to keep his underhook where I need it, either pushed through with me over, or with his hand on my back, but me with a really tight overhook, bearing whizzer pressure down right at his elbow. The second concern that I have when I'm trying to submit from this position is if Donovan comes up on his elbow. Or his hand, but we're going to deal with the elbow for now. Again, bad position for me. He can now start repummeling that underhook, pushing it back up higher. He can take a single leg from here. There's lots of bad options for me. I really don't want him getting up on that elbow. One of the things that I like to do from this position is wrap the head. As I said, I like to choke. But if I go right here and I put my hand up by his throat, I'm immediately telegraphing to Donathan, hey, I'm looking to choke you. So the first thing he's going to start doing is he's going to start putting his hands right up there by his neck, and he's going to start defending the choke. So instead, both to not tell him that I'm trying to choke him, and also to keep control of this elbow so he can't post up on it, I'm going to wrap the head, and then my hand goes right here on the inside of his elbow. Now, two things happen. Number one, if he stays down on his low shoulder, I can push that out and I can get another distraction submission where I'm neck cranking him here. Sort of a half stocks type neck crank. Again, it's low percentage, but it's something for him to think about that he's going to have to address. Number two thing is if I can get his arm pushed out that far, I get to slide that knee in place, and now he's going to have a rough time of getting that arm back in to try to block off the chokes that I'm trying to set up over here. If he actually comes up to his elbow, same thing, over the head, under the arm, push out at the elbow to take him back down. If I really want to go for the submission, all I got to do is just put a gable grip on here, stretch him forward, and I can get the neck crank. Low percentage submission, but it is a good distraction. He gets hit with that a couple of times. He starts getting a little bit leery about coming up on his elbow, leaving him in better position for me to start setting up the moves that I want to do. So, to review from my underhook position, when he starts getting that underhook, as soon as I feel him digging that in, immediately sit down on his hip, frame to keep him from coming up. I can pummel back to my underhook if that's the position that I want to go to, or if I'm looking to submit from an overhook, I can just take my overhook back, strong on his elbow, putting a lot of downward pressure on him so he can't get a good underhook. Wrap the head, go to the elbow, not the chin, the elbow, so I can either push it out and slide my knee in, or if he comes up to that elbow, I can put the half stocks on, neck crank him, and if he gets cagey and tries to keep his hands up by his neck to keep me from choking him, I've always got that little wrist lock that I can apply. Won't get very many taps with it, but I will get hands out of the way, and then I can go back and I can start wrapping the neck. And then I can start working my submission game from my